Okay, we're live. Welcome to our talent talk on the subject of talent communities. I'm Adam Gordon. This is the first time that I've done it here on Recruiter Zone, and I am enjoying it so far. So, talent communities, just a quick just a bit of kind of understanding of what a talent community is. So my definition is a talent community only exists when people in the community can liaise with each other, whether that's online or whether it's offline. Loads of recruiters use the term talent community to describe something which is actually just a database, or as I would call it, a talent pool. Talent pipeline, again, that's a completely separate thing. That's not a talent community, and it's not a database. So I'm going to talk through, in a minute, I'm going to talk through my 30-point plan for virtual talent communities and how you can go about building your own. I'm going to talk, each of those 30 points, I'm going to do it in like 5 seconds each. So don't worry, it's not going to be like an hour's kind of lecture. But then I'm going to talk to Kasia, to Jeremy, and to Nick about talent communities that they've built. But just before I go into my 30-point plan, if you guys can just introduce yourself with a quick sort of, what's your name, what do you do, and sort of what's your kind of main professional interests. Kasia, do you want to start?
Oh, sure. So I'm a sourcing and social recruiting trainer. Basically, I just help recruiters do a little bit better with identifying candidates and talking to them. I work mostly in Poland, but I've worked on other markets in Europe. And something that I'm very interested in is culture and languages. And generally, I try to mix that into what I do somehow. So the cultural differences, for example, I will definitely want to talk about that and how it, how you can see those differences in business as well. So yeah, that's just a quick intro about me.
Okay, I've got a request from Recruiting Animal, which is, Kasia, show us that mean face from that photo.
That was a mistake. I never do this. I always smile. I don't know how that happened. So there you go. Great.
Jeremy, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me. So my name's Jeremy Thornton. I'm one of the founders of the Oasis HR group. We have 3 parts to the business. First part is Oasis HR, a recruitment agency, mid to senior hires. The second part is the HR think tank series, our talent community. And the third part is Resourcing Insight, a analytics and reporting business that we set up. We are a fully network-driven organization. We run about 25, 30 networking events a year. We have about 4,500 members in our talent community. And off the back of the value that we give to our members, they're kind enough to engage the other parts of our business. So really looking forward to this conversation today. To hopefully pick up a few tips along the way on how we can improve. Share a few ideas with you guys about some of the trials and tribulations we've been through since we set up the think tank back in 2009, 2010.
Wow, so long running community. Message for you from Recruiting Animal, which is that it looks like you're looking into a pond and we're looking up at you from the bottom. I kind of.
Sorry about that. I don't quite know.
I feel like we're pond life and you're something different.
Thank God we've got Recruiting Animal on the...
Nick, welcome.
Thank you. I'm slightly concerned now about what's going to be said about me, but never mind. It's nothing that's been said before, I'm sure. Good afternoon. My name is Nick Eaton. I am head of recruitment for Specsavers in Northern Europe. I am bored. You're absolutely right. Thank you. Well observed. You clearly don't need to go to Specsavers. Ha-ha. So my role is head of recruitment for Specsavers in Northern Europe. For those of you not based in this part of the world, may not know that we have 430 stores based in the Netherlands, Denmark, Norway, Sweden and Finland. And my role is to look after everything to do with recruitment for those businesses, predominantly a franchise organisation. but we have significant challenges in this part of the world with recruiting professionals for those stores. The main reason being is that for 4 of those markets, we have just 7 universities where we can recruit opticians and hearing professionals for those stores here in the Netherlands. The Netherlands is actually a deregulated market. Portugal is the only other country in Europe where it's not a regulated market for optometry. So about a year ago, we established what we call the Specsavers Green Club, which is a network for professionals that work within optics that don't have to work for us but can do if they wish to really understand more about the environment we work in, the professionalism that we look to extend into the industry, and to really understand what's going on and how we can develop really a network within the world of optometry and hearing in the Netherlands.
Brilliant. Okay, thanks. So, as promised, I'm going to quickly talk through this 30-point plan. So, point number 1: do not use your organization's logo on your community. Now, you can do it in some instances if you're offering loads and loads of value, like, for example, Specsavers Green Club. But it looks like Specsavers Green Club, to me, looks like the initiative is Green Club, and it looks like it's basically sponsored by Specsavers, is the way it looks to me. But here's the big thing. I saw one of the worst things I've ever seen was on LinkedIn about 2 years ago, and literally it was a call to action to the world's top corporate lawyers: come and join the BAE Systems talent community. I'm like, do you know who you're talking to? Why on earth would the world's top corporate lawyers come and join your spam fest? You just don't do it. So I think if you make your community something different, again, Jeremy's got a great example. I won't spoil it, but don't like over brand it. Do not use your organization's community, which is pretty much the same kind of thing as don't use your logo for exactly the same image. Same reason. Use imagery which is going to reflect what it is you want the community to be about, especially if it's online. Okay, these are back to back here. I would say I knew them all 30 of them off by heart, but make sure the owner of your community is the most senior and best known professional in your organization on this subject matter. If you're setting up a community that is about risk in banking, get your chief risk officer and make that person the owner of the community. Bring in other senior professionals from inside your organization to act as managers for that community, partially to spread the load, partially to make it look like you've got strength and depth, partially because everybody reacts in a different way to different people. And if you've got a spread of people, then you're going to appeal to most. Recruit credible professionals from outside your organization as managers on your community. And what I mean by that is, if it's all people from your business, then it's going to look very obviously like it's a recruitment initiative, I think. Whereas if you maybe find journalists or analysts, probably not people from your competition because you want to retain a competitive advantage, but other people that are well known to that group of individuals, I think that's a good thing to do. Run a workshop for community managers so that they understand what to do and so that they understand what it's all about. Don't just do it all for them because that'll become really, really taxing. You need them to be enthusiastic. Incidentally, when you recruit kind of senior professionals in your organization to come and be managers and figureheads at your community, you don't just get everybody, don't just select 4 or 5 people based on their job title. You really have to consider, are these people gregarious? Are they the sort of people who you can give them the skills and some understanding of what to do, and they will do it because they really value doing things in a different way and they're happy to get their face out there? If they like to sit behind their desktop and they sit in their in their office and they don't like to leave, they're probably not the right people to be involved. So do a workshop so they understand what to do. Ensure you're like, I think I've written this really from the perspective of a LinkedIn group, but a lot of these features are similar in other communities. But ensure that the summary of the community is written in a way which reinforces the reasons why members should come and join. So really think about what are the 2, 3, 5 different things people will get in return for coming and joining. Make sure if it's online, make sure your description has got all of the keywords that people would be searching for online to find a community like yours. Make use of templates. If you're doing it on, I mean, a Facebook group is a brilliant place to do a kind of community. In fact, interestingly, the amount of people who go onto Recruiting Animals group, Recruiters Online on Facebook, and say, talent communities don't work. But hold on a second. If he was using it to recruit recruiters, perfect. It works. Of course it works. That is one. That's a great example. I'm getting told that 10's enough already. So why don't I just stick to 10 for now, and then I'll maybe come back to the next 20 or refer to it if we run out of things to say, but I suspect we won't. Kasia, tell us about your group. Tell us about how you came up with the idea, what it was originally for. Tell us about the fact that it's moved from one place online to another place online, and why that happened, and what it's all about.
Right. So basically, Poland sourcing community is, well, I created it because we don't really have much going on in terms of training in Poland for recruiters. Definitely not in Polish. And while a lot of recruiters working on the market do speak English, some of them just don't speak well enough to actually understand the complex sourcing stuff. And not all of them speak English anyway, not all of them work in English. So while I was still in London, I thought, wouldn't it be nice to just help those people out a little bit? And because I had little to do, I only recruited for 2 roles in like 6 months. I was bored out of my mind and decided to go ahead and put my energy into that project. And I started it on LinkedIn, thinking every recruiter is on LinkedIn. That's where they hang out. That's where they spend time. And it turned out that wasn't a good idea. So I got the group up to maybe 100 people, but it was very much a medium that allowed me to broadcast information to them. It's not very interactive. And since then, LinkedIn groups have gotten way worse. So at some point, I decided to move it to Facebook. And for a while, I had both groups going on, and I thought it's probably working for different peoples on different platforms. But then when LinkedIn groups changed and some of the options that we had before were cut, I thought that group doesn't really have to be active at all. And I started forcing people to join the Facebook group. The reason it worked, I think, is because I got a couple of really engaged people involved at the beginning, and because they had a lot of value to offer. So it wasn't just me. I did a lot of work at the beginning just to share whatever I know and help people out. But then in the end, it was other people as well who were basically helping anyone new to recruitment with questions they would have. And over 2.5 years, we grew to 1,200 people on Facebook. Even though I'm told recruiters in Poland don't like Facebook, they definitely don't like to use it for professional purposes, but somehow we made it work.
Kasia, question.
Maybe I should wear earphones.
Why? Did you say that not all of the people in your Facebook group are on LinkedIn?
Not all the people that are on the Facebook group are on LinkedIn at all. And this is because...
But they're in recruitment, but they're not on LinkedIn.
Yeah, well, we're in Poland, right? We have a Polish equivalent for basically everything that exists. So we don't necessarily use eBay. We use Allegro, which is the Polish equivalent of eBay. And the Polish brands are very important for us. So there's an equivalent of LinkedIn as well. That's called Golden Line. And it's very popular among a lot of people. And some recruiters are not on LinkedIn, but they will use Golden Line.
Okay. That's very interesting. I'm going to quickly tell you my Polish, an interesting Polish thing. So My wife and I were at a car wash about a year ago, and it was one of those car washes where you drive up and the people actually wash your car for you, and it said car wash £5, and then it said Polish wash £8. And my wife said to me, "What's a Polish wash? Does that mean like it's done much better than a normal car like wash?" And I said to her, "It says polish and wash, not anyway."
Yeah. Well.
Okay. Right. That's great. My question would be, have you? Yeah. Thank you. Have you ever considered using your community? Oh, sorry. Not have you considered using it? Who has used your community to recruit people? Have people have businesses have people used your community for sourcing?
Yeah, so I mean, anyone is encouraged to use it for sourcing. If they want to source people who are members of the group, that's fairly easy to do. But we also actually advertise jobs. So something that was pointed out to me after I initially said no job postings, that's not what the group is for, people actually wanted that to happen. So I guess the difficulty is the group doesn't belong to any one company. So it's fair game for everyone to advertise their jobs. And I guess there was a time when we had strict rules about what that job posting would look like. Right now it's more of a list, just because there's a lot of companies advertising jobs in the group. So it's a list where we tag the people that you want to contact about certain jobs, and that's how it works.
So do you not fancy basically starting a rec-to-rec business, because you've got a pretty good database and a lot of profile with all those people?
Yeah, I loved rec-to-rec. That was really fun to do at the very beginning of my career, but I really just mostly enjoy helping others, as silly as it sounds, something for the animal to make fun of. Yeah, I mean, it's not really something I would do. However, I do use it for business purposes as well. So because I offer training, some people told me at the beginning, if you help people through the group for free, no one's going to pay for training. That's not really true at all. I have a lot of cases where a recruiting manager will come to me to say, listen, all of the people from my team are in your group. Why don't you come over and run a training session for them? So that definitely helps the business too.
Yeah, so you're generating goodwill. So you're leading with value, you're generating goodwill, and as a result, that benevolence is creating something good happening in return. Is everybody getting this like double, treble echo? Or is it just me? You're all getting it?
Yeah.
Okay. If any, yeah, nice music. Okay. Sorry, Aileen Brown has said that she's going to back you if you want to do more rec to rec. I don't know whether that means financially, but take it out with Aileen, I think. Jeremy, tell us a bit more about HR think tank and its offshoots, and where did the idea come from and what's it all about?
So funny enough, I spent the first.
Wow.
If somebody logged in twice. Anybody logged in on a phone and let's take a look. Okay. Okay, Jeremy, go for it. Let's see.
Does that sound better?
Hold on a second. Any idea what, no idea. All right.
Okay.
Perfect. Done. What did you press? Did you switch it off and back on again? Okay,
cool. So, funny enough, I spent the first 7-8 years of my career doing IT rec to rec. Following on, know that area really well, and we decided to move the business into the internal recruitment markets. initially using a lot of the relationships we had with the RPOs. They had on-site recruiters. Internal recruitment back then was growing really quickly. And we found that once we started speaking to our customers, internal recruiters, a lot of them were having the same conversations. How do I do this? How do I do that? And we thought there could potentially be some value through putting people around a table. We thought initially we might run 3 or 4 network events a year. It sort of snowballed, and now we run 25 to 30. Our whole philosophy for the HR Think Tank series is that the HR Think Tank series is owned by its members. So we've designed it so it's free for the members to come to events. We're really grateful that our members host the events for us, and also the members set the topics and the agenda. So at the front end, we have these 25 events. At the back end, we have a lot of the members talking amongst themselves. And our whole ethos at the events is this is the beginning of the conversation. So come to an event, we'll have a discussion around, for example, referral schemes or GDPR. We'll then connect everyone directly, and those conversations then carry on. I think for us, we're also very open and very honest with our members around the fact that we're a commercial entity. The HR Think Tanks series fuels our other businesses, and also we have partners who pay to be at the events. And what we say to our members is we'd appreciate it that if you guys have a need in the future at any particular point for a recruitment provider, a selection provider, some analytics, reporting, please just bear us in mind. And I think that goodwill and that honesty goes a long, long way. We're not trying to hide anything. Also, we're open with our members that from a recruitment perspective, our 4,500 think tank members are also a talent pool for us as a recruitment business. And when we have roles, for example, for a global head of talent acquisition, think tank members, first place we go quite often, and we'll ask them for referrals. So we're very, very open that it's a community. We're also very open that it's hopefully beneficial for everyone from the perspective of them being able to fulfill their potential by discussing and bringing new ideas to the table. And what we do in return is we promise just to facilitate the discussion. So I'd definitely say that being honest, open with our members is key to it. The other thing we found is when we set the HR Think Tank up originally, it probably took us about 2 years to get any sort of return on investment from it. Setting up talent communities is a long-term investment. We've had a lot of think tanks on talent communities, and companies will come into it, they'll think, oh, I'll set one up, expecting there to be a return on investment within the next 6 weeks. That's just not going to happen. So for us, it's that understanding and appreciation that it will take a long time for it to deliver return on investment. We nearly pulled the plug at one point. We were like, what are we getting back? But then it started. The tide started to turn. The other thing I think that has been really beneficial to us is the quality of the members. If we found that if you can get some really good individuals into your talent community, other people want to engage from them. But also the sort of individuals who are open to sharing ideas. So we found over the years that we have a core, and those guys are great. They're very open, they're very honest. The other thing we work really hard on is to make sure that from any sort of event we run, we do a blog, a takeout. And if you go onto Oasis HR's website, look in the blog section, you'll see in there's literally hundreds and hundreds of blogs from events. And where we find these add value to our community is that these blogs they're not our thoughts, they're peer-to-peer. So they're actual people who sat around the table, they've suffered, what our members have suffered in the past, and they've got the results they need to get. So our sort of strap line is discussion, debate, and therapy, and I'd very much say that therapy element is really important to us, to the community, where people can feel that they can openly and honestly discuss ideas. So you have to create that trust, and that does take a long that does take a long time to develop. We've never really put too much structure around think tank. We just ask for people to be open and honest. We've never tried to artificially accelerate its growth. We basically rely on recommendations and referrals. Originally, we started with just the resourcing think tank, and then we found that as a business and we moved into other areas of HR, we found that our members were saying to us, well, can you do stuff around business partnering, employee relations, leadership? And that is how we went from one think tank out to 6. So we now have 6 threads that all sit under the HR think tank.
What are the 6?
Series banner.
What are the 6?
So we have resourcing, diversity, ER, reward. Is that 6? I lost count.
That's for HR. Yeah.
So what we've also done is we've evolved those think tanks. So originally we had the HR business partner think tank. We actually evolved that into the leadership think tank. So it's, once again, it's just listening to our members. We also find that it's really key to keep people up to date. So we run a monthly newsletter, and what we found works well with that is giving our members the opportunity to share their content and thoughts. So yeah, it's just basically just keeping it simple and not trying to artificially push people and drive people in the wrong direction, which I think is the reason why a lot of talent communities can fall over.
One of the things that I just found to be very interesting in what you said there was that you have relied on the community growing organically, and you've deliberately not done anything to sort of artificially build that community. When you go and ask people to come and do something, they're not as bought in, and they're not as committed as when somebody else has told them to go and do it, or somebody else has recommended them to go and do it. When that happens, it's such a powerful sort of effect, and it seems like you've got this core partially because of the fact that you've not gone out and tried to sell the benefits of this community, and you've not, I think it's peer-to-peer recommendation that works. The other thing we find really surprising is that sometimes we won't hear from members for a long time, and you think, actually, have they disengaged, or are we getting benefit? So I remember we had Chris, who was the head of recruitment globally for Apple. She came along to a couple of our events, and then she just disappeared off the radar for about 3-4 years. Didn't hear a thing from her. Thought, she's gone by the wayside. But then it literally just pops up. Could give us a call to say, I'm looking for an internal recruiter to join my team in central London. Can you help? Fantastic. Went down to see her, and basically said, I've run off my feet. I just don't have enough time in the day. Hence why I haven't come to the events, but I always read the write-ups. So yeah, it's that peer-to-peer recommendation, and also it's just having, I suppose, a bit of faith that actually a lot of people might not come, might not engage, but they're still part of the community and they still get value from the community. I think that's another very, very important aspect of a community, is that it is multi-channel, because if you, some people like events, some people hate going to events. Some people like to read a newsletter, some people like to watch a video. If you're offering ways of interacting with your community, multi-channel, multi-format, it's going to get to more people. It's simple as that, because everybody's got different preferences.
Yeah, hopefully so. Hopefully so. I mean, the way we look at it is not everyone likes to be on a dance floor. Some people like to stand around the edge of the room, which is great. The other thing we do, and we work really hard on, is to try and make sure that we maintain the seniority of the individuals within the think tank. So our view is that we try and have senior strategic folk along, because that then means that the level of the conversation is beneficial. We do have sometimes more junior people come along, and what happens is they're quite often sat on the outside of the conversation. So I would just, I'd say another key thing is knowing who your audience is in terms of the seniority, to make sure that the level of the conversation is the right level for those individuals, rather than some people say, oh, I can't make it, so I sent a member of my team along. A member of the team then comes along. They might only have a couple of years experience, and when you're having a discussion around strategy and how you evidence ROI, they just get left behind a little bit. The other thing we do is at every event now we ask people for their feedback. So we get feedback, how likely are they to recommend us? We take that on board, and we work really hard to make sure that ideas are constantly put back into the think tank. So even though the ethos and the core is still as it always was, we are always trying to make sure that we keep on top and take people's ideas on board.
Do members pay to come to the events?
No, so membership is free. There's a really simple reason for that. Trying to get a PO number out of some of our members' organisations to pay for an event would just be harder work. On the flip side, we also find that as with a lot of free to attend events, we have quite a few people who can't make it on the day because of other commitments. So we just sort of try and balance that up. And that's the reason why also we have some partners who are financially committed to the events, which means that we can then run all of the everything behind the scenes.
Partners being sort of sponsors, effectively.
Yeah, partners are sponsors. So we have a very small select number of partners, people we've known from the market for years, people we know who will add to the conversation. A partner comes along knowing that the think tank is not an opportunity for them to sit there and sell themselves. It's an opportunity for them to add value to the conversation. And what we find is quite often the partners will have a different view on certain topics, and can quite often bring different thoughts to the conversation to enrich the conversation. Sometimes we will also bring in industry experts. So around, for example, the apprenticeship levy or GDPR, where everyone in the room is pretty much not really sure what's happening, we'll bring in an industry expert. We don't go down point and preach, but sometimes there is a need to add that technical knowledge to a discussion.
Yeah. Great. Thanks, Jeremy. A couple of comments on that. Billy McDermott says, I'm a big fan of think tank. And Toby Culshaw says, HR think tanks, the example I use for the best talent community I've seen.
Well, thank you, Toby.
Nick, let's talk about optometry. Let's talk about the ins and outs of how to be an optometrist.
There's a quick conversation.
Green Club.
A Scandinavian optician, indeed. Yes. Dealing with the joys of working in some of these enormous countries where you've got one university, where you're not only, if you've got one university, you're also paid to go to university. It doesn't cost you anything to get there. Universities graduating 12 people on an optometry course every year, which is always fun. At one end of the country, you've got your vacancies at the other end of the country where it takes 2.5 hours to fly there. So, we have a number of challenges in the countries we operate in. So we also have the enviable position of being market leader in the countries we operate in, which is enviable to me. It also means that we kind of have we decided we have a not a duty, but we wanted to kind of understand the industry a bit more. We wanted to get involved in the industry a lot more than we are. We've been in this part of the world for 10 years now. So we are still young, really, by Specsavers standards, been going for 34 years now in the UK. And we, I guess, really wanted to build this community to really not just use it as a way of engaging talent, but really also to really build relationships with people that will never work for us as well, because we know that, for example, in communities where there are only 12 opticians in some towns, if we're going to develop talent for the future, they will come from the daughters, nieces, nephews, sons, whatever, of the people that are already working there, and that they have to move to the other end of the country to do their studies, and therefore we want them to consider us as be their employer of choice once they graduate. So the Specsavers Recruiting Club was born with three clear purposes. One is to really spread industry news, technology, really about what's going on in the industry, what we're doing, what is happening with a lot of change which is happening in the industry, certainly as the medical providers, the equivalent of the NHS, if you like, in all of the countries we operate in, push a lot more of the services out into the private sector, and that means that the role of the optician will change. Also allowing the opticians to develop themselves professionally. They, as many professional medical people and veterinary people do, have to continue their professional training as they go through practice. So we are able to provide what we call CEP points, continuing educational training points, and we are able to negotiate with the government bodies to provide that online as well, which has been a real first for us as well, which is great. And obviously, finally, the third one is, and I have to say, it is the minor part of the community, which is talking about Specsavers and how we operate, and some of the kind of the life-saving stories, and the kind of being a great place to work type stuff. But that is really probably the third and minor part of what we do as a community. So we've grown it to 2,000 people over the last year, and that engagement's been done through our own sort of recruiting conversations, but also a lot of work we do with clinical conferences. We have 40% of the people that are in the community are not Specsavers employees. So they are currently working for other countries. At our clinical conference every year, in Finland, it is reputed that you can't get an eye test in Finland when a clinical conference is on, because a lot of our competitors will actually send all their opticians to our clinical conference, where we get a lot of international speakers from the industry that will come across and go on a bit of a line. So I'll answer the question that's popped up. So other companies are not bothered about it, because what we are doing is we are advancing the clinical industry. We have an ethos in our business, which is that actually we care about eye health. Though it would be wrong of us professionally to say we don't. We would rather that someone had their sight saved by somebody that we develop professionally and not conscious at all. Clearly, there is a commercial aspect to that, but actually, if we develop an optician professionally and they see that's the future, there is a much more long-term view of that they're seeing what we do as a business in terms of our future talent than there is about the instantaneous of someone seeing it and then going back to their own practice, whether it be from a competitor point of view. So in terms of what we do, the geography, it's great to hear that you can do lots of fantastic events, and events are always great to see. We had about 2,500 people come to our clinical conferences a couple of weeks ago in all 5 countries. The geography of the country we operate in is quite phenomenal, and I have to say, as a Brit, before I came over to this part of the world, I didn't quite appreciate how big some of these countries were and how sparsely populated they are. There are more people living in London than there are in Denmark and Norway combined, pretty much. And the distances are massive. I don't know how many people anymore, but there are a lot more people have. So the fact that the people have to travel a long way, a lot of it's done online, a lot of video. We do a lot of seminars that we can share with people online using optical professionals that we network with, but also a lot more about running your own business and getting the most out of your own business, about how you can develop your P&Ls as well, which again, independence as well. So again, in terms of how we develop the network as well, we are using a lot of our professional PR team to really develop the network. And again, we do use it for, we don't use it for recruiting purposes. We never recruit out of the talent pool, but of the kind of the 80 potential store owners, because we are a franchise model in this part of the world, they're all part of the network and are encouraged to join during the early parts of the recruitment process as well. So that's kind of a bit about an industry network that we've built up, and I think it's probably one of the biggest industry changes that we've seen, and we will continue to develop it quite significantly over the next coming years as well.
So, Animal's question,
Yeah.
Are the companies that the optometrists are working for not concerned about their employees going to the enemy?
And as I said, no, because our long-term strategy is about developing the eye health of everybody. Strategically, we are, as I said, the industry and the health authorities in all countries are moving a lot of what is done in eye hospitals, for example, out into the private sector. So it would be remiss of us to say, well, we're not going to train anyone except our own people, or not expose the industry. That we see the industries moving forward in a very different way. So we don't see that as being any different. We know from the research that we did with the early adopters to the network, how do you view us as an organisation? And they're very clearly said, if something changes in the industry, Specsavers will be the people that do it first. So we know that that's where we're viewed as being industry-wise. So actually, that's kind of the position we've been given, and that's the responsibility we've got.
What are the pros and cons of being the market leader? Because in the UK, I know that there's the countries that you are working in, you personally are working in, you are the market leader, but it's not the same vast dominance that it is in the UK, with like 55% of all optometrists in the UK work for Specsavers. Yeah,
it's very different. So in Denmark, we have 33% market share, which is our highest one. In Sweden, it's about 28%, and then it sits somewhere around 25% in the other markets we operate in. But there are some very strong second place and some very strong established names, and shopping habits and cultural will either drive very, very long distances for those services, or not drive very far at all. Very, very different to how we shop and how we kind of find those services in the UK.
One other quick question. It's not really to do with communities, but do you mind just giving a quick sort of intro to what recruitment is like in Norway? Because you were telling me in Amsterdam last week about it's not quite the same as it is in the UK or certain other countries. There's a couple of interesting challenges.
Well, I mean, if you consider that if everybody in Norway stopped work tomorrow, then the government would be able to pay everybody's salary at the level they're earning today for the next 2 years without any blip in the economy, because the amount of money that's sat in reserves, because that's what they did when they got obviously the oil. So there is a very, very different attitude to money and to oil. So it is very, very different. So when you go and recruit an optician, and when you talk to them about salary, it's, they've already got the house, they've got the car, they've got the lifestyle that they're looking for. So a job and that kind of level of salary means something very different to that it does in the UK. There's also people tend to have a lot lower levels of expectation around mobility. That people will go and they have to go down to Oslo to study because that's where the university is. Then they will move back to wherever they live, and then they will be very, very reluctant to move anywhere, but they will drive 3 hours for a coffee.
But there's also a much smaller gap in pay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Than there is in, say, the UK.
Yeah, so the pay gap between someone who works so when you go and have your eye test, you'll see an optician who will be on a fairly, what you'd expect, quite a high salary. And then you'll see the next person who then dispenses the glasses, and the gap between those two people will be quite high. In most of the Scandinavian countries, and to an extent in the Netherlands, that gap is much, much lower. And actually, you'd be very surprised if there's any gap at all. And again, that's not because the jobs are valued, that's just because it's the salary you get paid for those particular roles, and the value that those roles have on. And again, it's because the salary of somebody is not particularly important. The other thing about salaries in most countries is that salary is public information. that anybody can find out what anybody else earns. So again, the amount of money somebody earns is less important. I remember someone going to get a new car at work, and they were choosing a particular model, but actually when you choose the model of a car, you have the letters taken off the back, so no one knows what model of car you've got. It's not important. The only person you buy that car for is you, not so anyone knows that you've got a particular make. They can make a car, but not the model.
So it's not like Italy, for example.
It's
okay.
It's a very different part of the world to work in.
Who from your team?
Yeah.
Now, I don't mean the named individuals, but which, like, in terms of Green Club.
Yeah.
I can imagine that sourcers would be interested and have an objective around getting involved in that. I can imagine that recruitment marketing would. I can imagine that recruiters would. Which are the kind of group of people that this fits in with in your business? So
we have one particular person who kind of manages the whole. I don't want to call it a database, but it's the best way to describe it. But it kind of manages the talent community on a day-to-day basis from a logistical point of view. We are currently looking at how. It was interesting that first point you mentioned about having the most senior person you can do to head it up. It's not me, thankfully, but putting someone. We've got a new sort of director of optometry that works for us, who will hopefully be the head of and is very much bought into the idea of developing the community. So from a professional point of view, that looks amazing. He's got some amazing links into the professional community within optometry in Scandinavia. So having kind of that really clear view of who's heading it up is really important. But from an internal point of view, our recruiters will get information on looking at who's looking at what vacancies, what opportunities, who attended the latest seminars, who's signed up to what particular webinars recently. So we use metrics from how that community is interacting with us on a very regular basis.
Okay. So we've got a question from Will, which is for his company. So for his company, he feels the best use of a talent community would be for sales. Is there any recommendation of a talent community for entry/experienced sales professionals in the UK of a live talent community? So I'm going to answer that in two different ways. First is, are there any live talent communities for sales? There are. There's one that I own on LinkedIn called Strategic Sales. And there will be others as well. But in terms of that whole kind of sales recruitment world, I think that's a brilliant discipline to be creating a community for. And the reason for that is because in most companies, in say tech businesses, in FMCG businesses, for example, sales is an evergreen hiring requirement. You're always going to be recruiting national account managers, for example. So if you're recruiting if you recruit a lawyer once every 2 years and you recruit a compliance manager once every 2 years, there's absolutely no need to create a community. That the effort that goes into that is way more than the trouble itself. And for the roles, the other thing is for the roles where you are the market leader, you're the company that everybody wants to work for, all you need to do is click your fingers. You don't need to do anything else. But for the roles where you're maybe not like the standout employer of choice and where there is there's lots of competition, then you absolutely should be looking at creating talent communities. And you've heard from Kasia and Jeremy and Nick some of the things that you need to be thinking about to make it work. But sales is a good one, and I think there's a couple of other reasons beyond that, which are that salespeople are gregarious. Salespeople like talking about themselves. Salespeople like to share, and they're pretty adept at social media as well. So
I would say, if I may, I think there's one other reason to create talent communities, and it actually would be a good idea for salespeople. You can't really know if someone is really good at sales until you've known them for a longer while. So even if you have a lot of applicants for a sales vacancy, The selection process is really difficult. But if you have long-term relationships with salespeople, you're going to know who's successful and who's not. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
If I can just jump in there, Adam, our resourcing think tank is probably our largest area of the HR think tank series. When I sit around that table, I'm very privileged that I get to sit there with the heads of recruitment from arguably, some of the biggest players in the market. It is amazing how I can assess people's ability when they're having an open discussion with their peers in the market. So as soon as the guys in the team get a role, who do you recommend? And it's really advantageous from our perspective to see a leader having a peer-to-peer conversation and holding their own with their peers, giving us a totally unique insight into those individuals. So just really interesting.
Yeah, a great comment here on the side from Mark Lundgren, who is Dolph's brother, by the way. Best sales community that he's seen is in New York, and it's a meetup group called the Enterprise Sales Forum. So great. Have you seen Jeremy, especially Jeremy and Kasia, because you're both suppliers to the employer kind of market. Have you seen any other organizations creating any talent communities that you've thought, actually, that's good? Because from an employer perspective, Nix is one of the few that I've seen that is absolutely, fulfilling what it's meant to. Because my example, BAE Systems calling for the world's top corporate lawyers to come and join their talent community was just the wrong approach. But any others that you've seen that you've thought were good?
I think maybe
they're pretty rare.
Yes.
BDO have got one called Tax Bites. BDO, the accountancy firm, have one called Tax Bites. And Tax Bites is just all about the knowledge around tax-related issues and what's going on in tax. There's an economic development consultancy I know who have a community it was called Economic Development under the coalition government, when there was a coalition government in the UK. And it's now called Economic Development Pre-Brexit. So they've changed the theme of it, but it keeps going, and there's over 1,000. There's over 1,000 members who are economists in the UK, and they share things in there about their views on economic development, and they're able to cherry pick the people who are engaging with the best and who are kind of showing off. Jeremy, there's an action for you there, which is recruiting animals, looking for a URL for the HR think tank online.
I'm just literally, it's hrthinktankseries.com. That just takes you through to the Oasis HR website. One thing we want to do is to spin it out onto its own platform, but it sits quite nicely. In there. Just going back to your previous point about other communities, we see a lot of organisations set them up, but then, as per my earlier point, they don't realise that it's a long-term investment. And quite often we'll see the stakeholder who's driving that leave to go to another business. And then as soon as that stakeholder leaves, straight away the question is, well, actually, should we have, can we better use that resource on day-to-day? It's similar in the way that we see a lot of organisations try and set up their recruitment function so they have people who permanently look at identifying talent. But as soon as things get busy, those people get pulled into day-to-day recruitment. So I think it's just long-term. It's a long-term, needs to be a long-term project. It does take considerable investment. It does take considerable time. And they also take quite a lot of resource. So if you're going to do it, I think about it, commit to it, because if you do try and build a community, you go out to the market to say that this is going to be the community of choice, and then it doesn't. I think that can probably have a really damaging effect on your brand. So don't think it's a
just to
do.
Go on.
sorry, there's a lot of communities that I see that are not connected to any company brand at all. And what I would say is, if you don't have the time to set a community and to really manage it, just source those people from that community, you know, find them on Meetup or wherever that community is. You can easily source them. But building a community, it's, I mean, I no longer have a full-time job. I'm just doing this, you know, so it does take a lot of time.
Absolutely. Question from Aaron. Do you bother to screen people to prevent thieves? Well, I mean, thieves is a very specific like problem to be looking for, but do you bother to screen people? So when I've run communities, and in fact, just going back to Jeremy's point about you know, putting communities together, and then you know, you need to be committed for the long term. Absolutely. Somebody leaves the business, the community goes flat. We've done it. I mean, about 10. We created about 10 talent communities for different organizations, and about 4 of them are still, like 5 years later, are still going really, really well. About 6 of them have disappeared, and they disappeared at the point where we had, not long after we handed over with the exact plan for exactly, this is now what you need to do. This is the people in your business that need to do this, need to do this, need to do this. And of course, if nobody's getting paid to do it, we were getting paid to do it. So, you know, they did kind of disappear. But certainly we were very, we were very strict about who would be able to become a member of communities that we had created, with one exception, and that's the strategic sales community that I created. And I very deliberately have left that open to pretty much anybody to come and join. Let's see, Mark. Question from Mark. Nick, the JVP business model is Specsavers' greatest strength. In terms of succession planning, do you feel that the club is the first resource?
Yeah, so that's the same as our franchise model in this part of the world. I mean, that's about generating new business owners, so the new franchisees or partners in the UK to own business. I mean, ultimately, that's what we look to bring into the business. So yeah, we always start with generating interest, and we do talk about that quite a lot within the club. So we put articles on about people who have gone through the career path, etc. So it's one thing that it's a USP for us that none of our competitors can offer. So yes, we do. Yeah.
Okay. So comment from Iker, who is now, so Iker Juzue is now famous as the Sourcing Summit Europe's winner of their sourcing hackathon. And he doesn't sound it, but he lives in Glasgow. Anyway, he recently started a sourcing community following Kasia's advice. Thanks again, for Spanish-speaking professionals. Just at first steps, as nothing like this has existed before. It's been done more for the networking and knowledge sharing, and isn't linked to a specific company. Great experience overall. Comment from Will: if there are any agencies online, have a look at what Tom Cottrell from Source LF has achieved with the UX community. Fairly sure there's a video out there where he explains it. Sounds great. I'm definitely going to go and take a look at that. I'm conscious that it's our time's up, so I'd really like to thank Kasia and Jeremy and Nick for coming and joining me on this talent talk. This is a subject I could continue to talk about for hours. I just absolutely love it. When it works, it's so satisfying. It really is to see it working and to see it actually turning into tangible results. And I'm really pleased that you guys are doing such great things. And there's a couple of other great examples we've got there as well. So thank you very much. And we've got our next talent talk probably tomorrow. I don't know. They're coming thick and fast at the moment, but stay tuned on Candidate ID social media for the next one. And yeah, thanks very much, guys. See you all soon.
Thanks.
Thank you.